The Japanese cabinet approved Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's reinterpretation of Article 9. It now allows for the deployment of troops abroad. It's a highly divisive issue, and one of the many conversations taking place in Asia now. Welcome to Asia Now. I'm Steve Miller. Today's guest is a Japanese-based American video blogger. He's also an artist, as well as, more importantly, a father. You may know him as Unrested on the internet. Scott Ackerman, welcome to Asia Now.
Nice to be here.
So, Scott, before we get into this week's topic, collective self-defense in Japan, why don't you go ahead and take a quick moment to let everyone know who you are?
My real name is Scott Ackerman, but I, at this point, pretty much go by Unrested wherever I show up in Japan. I started a channel 8 years ago now, and that's how long ago I moved here too. My first couple of videos were like me walking around Japan and music. That was it. And then one day I took a chance and actually talked on camera, and 100 people added me. I just made something called a JFAQ, which was Japan's Frequently Asked Questions. And from there, the channel kind of blew up. I got 100 subscribers, become a serious endeavor at this point as the source of income. My newest show, Osoroshi Saturday, is the one I'd want to shout out the most. It deals with creepypastas, urban legends, and some of the scariest stuff you can find pretty much in Japan, but really all over Asia.
Very, very good. So let's go ahead and dive into this week's topic,
Sure.
Collective self-defense. Now, as an American and a father living in Japan, how do you feel about the cabinet's reinterpretation of Article 9 to allow for collective self-defense?
It's really a strange situation. I'm kind of the guy who is always on the fence with everything political. I don't want to call myself a conservative or a liberal, even with my own political values. And same thing goes with this. I'm kind of on the fence. There's an aspect of it that affects me greatly due to the fact that my kids are Japanese citizens, even though they are what you call quote-unquote hafu, which means half American, half, or half whatever. It can really be anything. And if there was a call to arms or there was some sort of draft instated in the future, which at this point I highly imagine would never happen, but you never know, you never know. I would have to suddenly take my kids back to America because I don't want them fighting in a war, I'll be honest. I'm a lover, not a fighter, and that's kind of the feeling of my whole family. My wife's a Buddhist, and I'm not really a practicing Buddhist, but I follow her beliefs pretty succinctly. My brother-in-law is an actual Buddhist priest who has his own temple, so we're a family of pacifists, to say the very least. Let's put it that way. And so that would, it would literally not just be my own personal values, but it would be like against my religion to put them in a war, should Japan ever go. And I feel that's where you see this massive dichotomy happening across the entire country, is you've got this call back to post-World War II Japan, where they worship the emperor like a sun god and would, die for their country defending it or attacking for it. You've got really hardcore conservatives, and I'm saying only the most extreme hardliners. These are the guys who are part of like Uyoku and stuff like that. They want to see it go back to that. And then you've got, the other side where there's a man burning himself on the bridge in defiance of us becoming a warlike country. And that's obviously a very highly Buddhist pacifist symbolism, self-immolation for the safety of the country.
Right, and that took place last weekend. But, I have to, ask, every country in the world has the right for collective self-defense. It's in the UN Charter. Following World War II, it was the interpretation that that ability was removed from Japan. And a lot of people really wear the Article 9 as a proud badge that Japan is a pacifist country. We don't engage war.
Right.
But every country out there has the ability to do so. And just because you have the ability to do so doesn't mean that you're going to pick up and engage in conflict. And you mentioned that, okay, if Japan is going to wage war, you'd move. Where would you go?
I'd go back to America, of course.
But America has that ability and is engaged in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be completely honest. American's the most warmongering country ever. I'm an American, so I can say that. I support our troops. I don't really want to give any kind of input on that right now because it's a totally different podcast. But we start and begin and enter into more wars than probably any other country.
No, and I absolutely agree with that. There are a lot of times, I mean, I've been very vocal about my opinions on George W. Bush and what he did to, put America in the situation that it's in. But I guess the point I was trying to make is that every other country has this. So no matter where you go, you have, I guess, the risk of being in a country that is going to call upon its citizens.
But here's the thing, is if I took my kids back to a country where religion is still of a very high respect, they can register as what's called
conscientious
objector. And they're Buddhist. I mean, they're registered as Buddhist. So, I mean, they can very easily get that. In Japan, I'm not saying it would ever go back to this, but if you remember post-World War II, I mean, it was like live or die. I mean, that's where the word kamikaze comes from, people who would sacrifice their own life. And I mean, there was no, hey, you want to join the military? There was just like, you join and die. Like, you kill yourself for your country.
Okay, so aside from the, I guess, political aspects, the conscientious objection that many people have towards returning towards that conflict zone, do you think, based on your experiences of living in Japan, that Japan has any other choice, given China's expansion into the China Sea? It's slowly ramping up to take on Japan around Senkaku or the Diaoyu Islands, its activities in Vietnam. Do you think that if Japan doesn't approve some kind of measure like reinterpreting Article 9 or actually moving forward with a constitutional revision, do you think it would be actually able to protect Japanese territory?
Yeah, I think what you would see, honestly, in my own personal opinion, and I have no statistics or certificate that says anything I'm saying is any bit true, but I think America would step in first. I mean, let's be honest. They're got a hand in this pot too. They're looking at, I mean, and this is just, again, my opinion, they're looking at not just China as a possible encroachment upon Japan. I mean, it's an economic war as well. I mean, I see China's now up to the second spot in the economic ladder in the world. America's first, but then everybody, I mean, has talked about China reaching to the top. So what they're looking for is more land. They're looking for more resources. They're looking, I mean, those islands have a ton of resources. That's what they want, and that can just help them reach even higher up. If Japan's finally like, what are you doing? Why are we letting you even stay in our country if you're not going to help us protect this land that has this resources that is by, wartime law that is officially ours? And I think finally they would put their foot down and be like, all right, look, we don't want you to fall too far behind. You're the third economy now. You're not the second like you used to be. And we don't want to become second and let them become first. So I think they would be like, look, this is kind of like drawing the line in the sand. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, Senkaku Islands would be that. And that's why you don't see an outright overtake of that island. Now, as for the weaker, and I hate to call them weaker countries, but they literally are weaker countries, like Vietnam, who's just recently been attacked. I mean, I worry for them even more. I feel like nobody's going to come out and protect them.
Well, I mean, the United States and Japan have, voiced support for Vietnam, for the Philippines, because of what's going on in the South China Sea. Japan has also given and has pledged to give more ships to the Philippines to help in their police of the disputed areas there. Do you see a more active role, whether or not this passes the Diet when it reconvenes, do you see a more active role based on your experiences in Japan?
My honest opinion, and I mean, I would say this even for the most hardline, like old school people here in Japan, I would say they probably wouldn't say we need to declare war unless they actually took foothold on the island, they actually...
I'm not saying declare war. I'm just saying that just in terms of collective self-defense.
Just become more, okay. Honestly, I would even say that. I'd say they wouldn't even be like, all right, we need to amp things up. Why are they on our island? Like, they know there's a lot of, bravado out there. There's a big angry bully in the sandbox that they have to tell to leave every once in a while. And I think as much as they yell and scream at each other, I mean, that's all it is right now, because, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of their economy stuff is based off of each other. And America, too, who's intertwined with Japan. So eventually there's going to be a point where I would imagine they think America would step in, but if we didn't, and they just said, oh, we're landing on the island, I think you would see even the most pacifist people, like even people like my wife, be like, what are they doing? We need to kick them out of there, because she's pretty passionate about it.
I can understand, yeah, and that's one of the difficulties and one of the problems that the Abe cabinet has really failed in doing, is adequately explain under the conditions when Japan would be able to exercise self-defense, but in most instances it hasn't.
That's the vagueness of Japan. You can leave a law that you write very vague so that when you are put in a position where you need to act, you can be like, well, look, this is what the law meant. I know I wasn't clear about that earlier.
But honestly, that's almost every country out there. That's why we get into so many lawsuits about, well, this is what it really means, or we can be interpreted this way. You look at even the United States with some recent Supreme Court decisions on what, this is what the Constitution means today. But that's, as you said, that's a whole different conversation. Yeah, one last question. Currently, over half of the population is against the reinterpretation of collective self-defense. The last number I saw by Kyodo was about 55%. Yeah. Now, currently the Diet is in recess. It's expected that they'll come back for an extraordinary session a little bit later to actually vote on the provision. Do you think that there is enough public support against the measure that legislators would actually hear that and decide not to ratify the decision?
Well, okay, here's my biggest worry is, you know, it's the group trying to get that bill passed is a member of 14, and it's, what's the guy's name? It's run by Shunji Yanai. He used to be the ambassador for the U.S., and the U.S. is pushing Japan to do this. I mean, I feel like the U.S. has, like I said, a hand in the pot on this. So I feel like there's a lot of times in Japan where people are like totally against something. They're just like, oh, interesting. Okay, well, we don't care. Like, and also the other problem I see is the most hardline people that are for it are the older generation. And as you know, we are a very gray nation. Last year we sold more old people diapers than diapers for babies. And they have the biggest voice in politics. So I really doubt it would happen. If it was enough outcry, if they did shout them out of there and say, look, we're not going that way, I imagine something major would have to happen. Like there'd have to be even something beyond like that guy immolating himself in Tokyo. I mean, no one even seemed to blink when that happened here. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like when politicians want to do something in Japan, they're like, what's your opinion? Okay, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. Like, that's my personal feeling with the way politics work here. I mean, if you look how the Diet works, like you can barely even vote for the people you're asking for. So it doesn't work. And the young people today don't care at all about politics in Japan. They're just like, whatever, I don't have a say.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. Well, in the conversation here, I really do appreciate your time.
No problem at all. It was good to be on.
And everyone out there listening, or in this case watching, because there will be a full video of this up on our website, please chime in and weigh in with your thoughts on Japan's collective self-defense and where you think it is going as the Diet is set to resume just a little bit later. Now, you can leave your comments on our website, on Facebook and Twitter. Just go to your favorite social media site and look for Asia News Weekly. Again, thank you for everyone who's joined us today. We'll be back on Wednesday with another Asia Now. Until then, thanks again for listening. I'm Steve Miller for Asia Now. Asia Now is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.